Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of the Memories of Plymouth. I'm Louise McCormick from the Plymouth Historical Society, and the Memories of Plymouth is one of our initiatives we've been running for the past 5 seasons. This is season 6, and our goal from the very beginning has to been collect and store, keep for future use these oral histories that we have been collecting for quite some time. I should check to see how many people we have done so far, but I'm assuming it's 50 or 60 people that have given their time to share with us their memories and their stories of Plymouth and the surrounding areas. Today, we have a guest, as always. And I would like to introduce you, if I can, to Eleanor, Jenness, Plummer.
Right.
I didn't flub up yet. Thank you for joining us, Eleanor, and your willingness to share an hour together, and I'm looking forward to hearing your stories. Are you ready to go?
I guess so.
You have no choice, lady.
I have no choice. No, that's why I have to be ready.
Let's begin. A lot of the questions I'm going to ask you in the beginning are just to identify yourself to the audience that we have out there today. Mm-hmm. Bingo, let's go.
I'm Eleanor Jenness Plummer.
Mm-hmm. And where were you born?
I was born at home on Texas Hill Road in a house that was built over an original settler's cabin.
And when you say an original settler's cabin, can you tell us approximately how old that house would be?
Well, the house that I was born in, or the foundation of the settler's cabin?
Ooh, let's go back to the foundation of the settler's cabin.
Well, now I really can't tell you.
I put you on the spot. Let's switch.
Well, I can't tell you. And I think the house was maybe built 17-something.
Wow.
I'm not sure about that either,
Wow.
but I'm pretty sure.
But it is one of the older homes that we have in our community.
Yes, it is.
That's great. That's great. When were you born? Some people don't like to say I am such and such an age, so you have the choice. How old are you? Or the date you were born.
85. I was born June 21st on the first day of summer in 1936.
1936. Thank you. Were you born at home? Were you born in a hospital?
At home.
At home? And who would have helped with the birthing?
Probably my grandmother.
Okay.
And an aunt.
And that was considered common way back when?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's find out about your siblings, your brothers and sisters. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I had a brother,
Mm-hmm.
Daniel,
Mm-hmm. And
who
he would have
passed
been
away several years ago.
older or younger than you?
Younger,
Mm-hmm.
3 years.
3 years younger. Let's talk about mom and dad. Mom, her name?
Nellie Elliott Jenness.
All right. And was mom a stay-at-home mom? Or
Yes.
She was?
She was.
All right. Did she ever have a job?
She worked in the paper mill in Ashland. She was winding the toilet tissue onto the cores, and then she went into the office and worked there for quite a while, I guess.
Let's do the same with Dad, your father.
Well, he went to Concord Business College for a short while, and decided he guessed he didn't need that. And he left and came back to Plymouth and farmed.
All right. So you have he had acreage.
Acreage. He had probably roughly about 80 acres
And where would that be located?
on Texas Hill Road
Okay. Okay.
in the house, all around the house where I was born.
In addition to farming, did he do anything else that you can recall?
He was substitute mail carrier for 3 different routes here in Plymouth. Route 3 and Route 4. I don't remember. I know he was substitute mail carrier for two of them anyway, for
Okay.
Route 3 and Route 4.
I remember you telling me once when we had met about him being a, let's see,
Oh, school bus driver?
very good. You beat me. You beat me.
Yes. Well, he used to, when I started school, he used to take me down to the corner of, I guess you'd probably call it Texas Hill Road, and the River Road, down by Stanley Hawkins's, and meet the school bus. And I guess that went on for probably maybe 2 years. Not quite sure about that either, but anyway. So one night we were at home and the principal of the school came to visit, and he said the reason for his visit was they were going to put a school bus route up on Texas Hill Road to bring all the kids down, because that's, I'm guessing again, probably when they were going to close Sergeant School, the one-room schoolhouse that was still running. And he had asked everyone who would be a good driver for that, and everyone said Ken Jenness.
Dad.
Kenneth Jenness would be the only one that they would recommend
Wow.
driving that route.
So he was hired.
So he was hired.
All right. All right.
He wasn't quite sure he wanted it, but he was hired.
Did he enjoy it?
I think he did.
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah.
think he did.
I'm just thinking all the children and picking them up and saying goodbye. Interesting. And
At the end of the season, at the end of the school year, he used to get permission from the parents and he'd take them on a ride.
oh, keep going. A ride where?
A ride around the like up north by the old man or someplace like that.
Yeah.
Someplace to give them a treat.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And they allowed that to happen way back when. You need to have a full bus. How many children? Do you have any idea how many children would be in a bus at that time? You can pass if you can't.
Probably about 5.
Oh, that's neat. That's a wonderful story. Thank you. We have your husband with us today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Would you like to introduce him to our
Sure.
audience? Sure.
Sure. This is my husband, Freeman Plummer.
That's all you're going to say about him?
He's a wonderful husband. He's a wonderful man. I am so lucky to have him.
And let's go back. What has your husband done for his occupation over the years?
Mainly, he was a truck driver, and then in later years, he worked at Frudenberg.
There we go. And where is Friedenberg located? So our audience.
Bristol.
Thank you, Bristol. All right. And where was he born?
New Hampton.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, I guess he was born in the hospital in Plymouth, whether it was Plymouth or Campton.
Oh, here we go. What side?
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. Up in Livermore.
But I think the birth certificate said Plymouth, right?
Your choice. Good choice. Good choice. And you have children?
Yes. I had 2 daughters, Kimberly and Rebecca. Kimberly passed away in 2003, and Rebecca is still with us.
And does she live in the area?
Yes.
Okay, close by.
Close by. Yes.
All right. Let's see. Let's do the address of your foundation. No, address of your home, so our audience can get used to that number. Do you have an address on it? 2 something, 7 something.
On my home where I'm living
Well,
now,
we can do both. Where are you living now?
at 277 Texas Hill Road.
And I have down here your address way back when. Am I correct? 793 Dick Brown Pond Road.
793 Texas Hill Road.
Okay. You caught a mistake of mine? Don't tell anybody. All right. And 793 would have been the home of?
Texas Hill Road.
Yeah. Who lived there? Your grandfather?
At one time, my great-grandfather lived there, but he lived there when, he lived there. There was a Mary Ann Gorley. She was a widow from her husband died in Andersonville prison.
Can you tell?
In the Civil War.
I was just going to say, how long ago was that? And you're telling me it's Civil War period.
The Civil War.
Wow.
And
wow.
He went down, I guess, he built a house next door, which is we were the only two houses within, we were in the middle of a mile. The nearest neighbors were a mile away. The children, where I could play with anyone, was a mile away. One house was a half a mile away, but they didn't have any children. That was Harold Glover. He had a daughter, Myrtle, but she was much older, much.
To walk a mile, did that bother you as a child?
No.
No, not at all. That's
No.
just what we had to do. Let's move on a little bit and talk about your education, where you went to elementary school.
Plymouth Elementary.
And it's located, let's see, most of the people, our audience, would know that it was in the middle of the town. How did you get there?
On my father's school bus. Or before he drove, I rode on the big yellow bus.
Big yellow bus.
You know, the big yellow school buses.
Okay, I'm there. I didn't know if it was a special one, had a special saying
the
to it.
regular school bus.
All right. But help me out a little bit if you would, please. The Sturgeon School, is that one of the original one-room schoolhouses?
Well, yes, I would say it is. I don't know when it was built or anything, but it was a one-room schoolhouse, and Martha Keniston was the teacher, and she was, in the wintertime, she used to let them go skating across the road in their lunch hour. There was a place that always flooded and then it froze, and she let them go skating there in their lunch hour.
What a thrill.
And she gave Christmas parties. Every year she had a Christmas party, and she asked all the kids in the neighborhood whether they went to school there or not. I was always asked, and Marjorie Smith was always asked from Reservoir Road. So there were several of us that never went to school there, that we always went to the Christmas parties. And she had these little boxes of candy or cookies that had a little string, and you carry them like a purse. And she gave them to everyone that was there.
Wow. Special. Good memory.
And the substitute teacher was Ruth Fry,
Oh, I think that
who
you mentioned
later married a sergeant, who, as far as I know, was no connection to the school.
Wow. All right. Talk about cellar holes if you can. I wrote down that there were cellar holes here and there. Do you have memories of that?
Well, there was a cellar hole on our property that belonged to one of the Civil War soldiers, but I spoke to my father about why was a school there, and he said because there used to be 8 homes within hollering distance.
And how many children would they have had in each of those homes?
Well, I don't know that.
But
I don't think he knew that. I know the schoolhouse was right across the road from where I lived. And we recently got a nice fellow with a cherry picker, and he went over and took the original doorstep to that schoolhouse and brought it over to our house where we live now, and it's now beside the driveway.
So the original doorstep of the school is now at your house.
Yes,
We're not going to tell anybody at all.
because we took it because we knew we had to sell the property because it was part of my father's land. And eventually, after we were married, we knew we had to sell that. And I thought, it's going to be lost because no one that's going to buy this is going to care about that rock, because it's only a nice flat rock.
Mm-hmm. But it has historical meaning.
So we just went up and he took it with his cherry picker, and
Again, we're not going to tell anybody.
no,
No
I
one's
wouldn't
gonna
do
know
that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't say who did it, so he can't get in trouble.
All right, let's see. We were talking about the number that we associate with the schoolhouses. All of the one-room schoolhouses at that time had a number associated to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you said there might have been some kind of a mix-up in regard to the school.
Yes, because the book that was printed, the historical book of New Hampshire
By Stearns.
by Stearns, listed it as number 10. But we had someone tell us that that schoolhouse was actually the first schoolhouse in the town of Plymouth, because when they printed the book, now this was not Stearns' fault, the printers put a 1 in front of or put a 0 after the 1, and it was supposed to be just the first schoolhouse. That was supposed to be number 1, but the printers put it in as number 2.
But again, one of the reasons why you had that school located where it was, the assumption is there were so many families, so many children, so it warranted it.
Yes,
Okay.
and my great-grandmother actually taught there for a while.
And who was your great-grandmother?
Florence Mitchell.
Okay, Florence Mitchell. Thank you on that one. So we've attended Spear Elementary. Did you go to Memorial, where you would have had junior high?
For 2 years, I believe it was. I think we went there 2 years.
And the comment you made on I found on one of my notes, was that you may have moved in to Memorial just after it was built. Am I correct?
Yes, I believe, well, after it was remodeled.
Remodeled? Thank you for the clarification.
Not built.
Okay, clarification.
That was an antique, too. Yes, I remember we had to carry our own books and everything. And
Nice.
we didn't have to carry our own desk, though. That was good. But we did have to carry all our papers and books. And
So we've gone to the elementary school, we've gone to the middle school, well, we'll call it a junior high, and then you just walked across the street to the second high school. First one has burned now. Did you know it burned? I just saw a picture last night looking at the United States Historical Society of Pictures, and the first one burned, I think, around 1904 or 5. Don't count me out. Yeah.
oh, I don't know anything
Yeah.
about that one.
Look
But we
this-
were, yes, we just walked across the,
How about some of the teachers that you had, I don't know, in elementary school, at the junior high or the high school that you can remember?
well, in grade school and first grade, we had Catherine Seavey. And then there was Mrs. Durkee and Miss Hoyt and Mr. Merrill and Miss Spitzner and Mrs. Brown.
So you and I both had Miss Spitzner. She was my 5th grade teacher.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, she was, I don't know what she really did teach me, but
Shh.
I can't remember, but I know I had her.
Mm-hmm.
She was there.
Mm-hmm.
She and Mr. Merrill was together. I
Mhm.
mean, as teachers.
As I've done my little history about teachers, they seem to move, some of them. Miss Bitzner might have been an 8th grade teacher, 5th grade teacher, 4th grade teacher. So they moved around over time.
They interchanged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I remember once she always chewed gum. She
Wow.
did.
Wow. Wow.
And I said to her one day, "How come you can chew gum and we can't?" She says, "Because I'm the teacher."
Whoa. Whoa. Was there a favorite subject that you had, Eleanor, when you were going to school? You enjoyed? The teacher, perhaps, or the subject matter?
My favorite subject.
Mm-hmm. Because you know the next question is going to be, was there a subject that you was not so favorite?
Well, I didn't like any subject that had to do with math.
Okay, we'll chalk that off. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I liked the English when we were doing books and poems and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the shorthand class and typing.
That would have been in high school?
That was in high school.
I think so too. I think so too. And you and I have shared another teacher in high school. I had Miss Riley.
Yes,
And you had Miss Riley.
I had Miss Riley.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for shorthand and typing. Yes.
And supposedly Miss Riley might have suggested that you might want to consider the vocation of being a teacher.
Oh, yes, she suggested that very strongly. Not just once, but practically every time I ran into her in my senior year. She'd corner me and, "You really want to be a teacher?" "No, I really don't."
And you did it so politely, I'm sure. I'm sure. I'm sure. Who was the principal during your tenure? High school?
Oh, the principal was, what was his name?
I'll help you.
Good.
Began with a Z. Should I do that or just tell you who it is?
Zulius.
Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're good.
I
You're
could
good.
see him, but I just couldn't see his name. Zulius.
You told me quite the story, and I think it's fair. I think we're comfortable sharing the story if you want to, about Mrs. Leahy. She was the sewing teacher.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Leahy. She was in a different building. We had to go there to a different building for sewing. And she was a little forgetful. And so sometimes one of the girls would get up and change the clock, move it ahead. And when Mrs. Leahy finally came in, she'd look at it and say, "Oh my, it really is late. I didn't realize I was this late." And one time they went looking for her and found her down in Newberry's in the sewing department. "Oh, I'll be right up. You go back up and go into class, and I'll be right up."
I must tell you, I laughed several times over that story, especially turning the clock. I thought it was, okay, I don't want to get ourselves into trouble. I usually ask this question of everybody. Did you participate in extracurricular activities when you were in high school?
No, I did not.
And
Nothing that had to be done after school.
Mm-hmm.
I had orchestra in high school, but nothing that had to be done because we lived 5 miles out.
that's exactly what people say over and over again. They had to find a ride home, and therefore it was really inconvenient. It was difficult.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. After high school, did you continue in education?
I started nurses training. I had a year down in Laconia, and then I left that, and well, over the years, I worked at the Shank Mill, and I took a course at the college, and I drove a school bus.
Well, I'm going to take you backwards if I can. When you worked at the shank mill, and I reference it as the peg mill, and we all have different names for it. It has such a long history. More recently, Foster's. That would, yeah, I think our audience can associate with that. What were you doing when you were at the shank mill?
Well, they made paint paddles and they made Hoodsie ice cream spoons, which I mostly worked on. And they also put the edging after the metal company bought into it. Or I'm not into their politics, but we did the edging on lawnmower blades.
Right.
And put the little lip that comes up
All right.
on them.
Do you have any idea how many years approximately you worked at the shank mill? A handful of years?
Well, I worked there several different times, so probably 5, 6 years maybe.
After you left, did you have another position elsewhere? Where did you go from here?
I went to Mountain Ridge Nursing Home. Of course, I drove school bus in between there too. And I was like driving to get back to school bus. My grandfather drove school bus, my father drove school bus, one of my uncles drove. It was only natural.
Only natural. I agree. I agree.
So, so then I went to Mountain Ridge and got a job there and took a CNA or an LNA course there and got my license there, and eventually I ended up I worked a little while at Taylor Home, but I ended up in Bristol at the nursing service there called NANA, Newfound Area Nursing Association.
Does that still exist today, do you know? Or some
aspect of it.
Sure, sure. If you think back with all the jobs, positions that you had, was there one that was more enjoyable than the other?
I think that one was, because I went to different people's homes and helped them there and did like blood pressures, and we did things like that, and then I feel I learned a lot of things. One of I call them patients. The head office didn't call them patients. They called them, I can't remember, but anyway. And one of them said to me, you know, I have learned so much from all you girls. And I thought, you know, we've learned a lot too of different things, because everyone that you went to would talk about their life experiences. So you would learn some things from them.
That would be fun to get their oral history too. People that have gone in for a short period of time, or people that have been there long term. Yeah, to get them to go backwards as well. Good, 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 good. Let's see, next one on my list. You were driving bus for Charlie Morse. That's a name that resonates with many of us, because he was our bus driver going to school, but you worked for him for a short time, correct?
Correct.
That's
Yes.
fun. What I'd like to do now is jump into certain topics, and you can pass on any topics, or you can expand on them from what I have written down here. And again, it's just talking about your life. You ready? Reflections on living in the area, Plymouth and the surrounding areas. What comes to mind? After all these years, Eleanor, what comes to mind? You were born here, you grew up here, worked in several places. Who were your neighbors? Who were your friends?
What comes to mind is being sort of isolated 5 miles out of town. I did a lot. I helped my father on the farm. I remember when I was littler, and carrying a pail of like equipment to fix the fences for the cows in the spring. Every spring we had to go all around the fence and tack up all the barbed wire that had fallen down and straighten up the poles that had fallen down during the winter, and we had to do that and go all around the pasture and repair the fence. And then I rode the mowing machine that my father was pulling with a tractor, and I rode the hay rake and manipulated that and helped get the hay in the barn, and
Wow.
helped with tapping some trees. And that was my responsibility when I got home from school, when the sap was running, to go and collect the sap.
Mm-hmm. Everybody should experience working on a farm. There's so much involved.
And weeding. Oh, my father had a huge garden, and my mother used to say, I don't know why you're planting all that. You know we're not going to eat all that. And she canned a lot of things, but it was also my job to weed it. I got 10 cents a row for weeding it.
Your father paid you?
Yes, 10 cents. 10 cents a row. But by the time I got every row weeded, it was time to start over again. And when he said weed it, he meant weed it. He didn't mean go through it and pull out a weed here and a weed there. He wanted it weeded so that each plant that was coming up from a seed that he had put in was like a little flower plant all by itself.
He sounds very particular. He wants you to do it this way. Oh. How about your next door neighbors that you had at that time growing up?
Growing up, I had 2 next door neighbors. I should say a man and wife. I had 1 next door neighbor house, and the man and the wife that lived there. That was the only neighbor within a mile.
Well, you used the word before, isolated.
Isolated.
Yes, there weren't a lot of people around, a lot of children
No.
around. You had to travel to get there, walk.
In the summertime, when their grandchildren got old enough, they'd come up and stay with them during the summer. And then I had them to play with in the summertime when they came up, after school got out. But then they had two granddaughters that used to come up and stay. And then they finally said, 1 of you at a time, because the 2 girls fought so much. They said, we can't stand this fighting.
Mm-hmm. Sisters. Mm-hmm. I love this story that you shared with me. It really resonated. Down the road, you had a next door neighbor, and you used to visit them on Sundays as often as you could.
Yes, because one Sunday I happened to go up there, and they were having breakfast, and they were having rice with butter. And I loved rice. And so I tried to make it a point to be up there every Sunday morning that I could, to have that rice and butter.
That's adorable. That's really cute. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go back if we can. When we were driving a few years ago, you and I took 2.5, 3 hours, and we just drove up and down and around Texas Hill, and you would stop me and share a story. There were a lot of cemeteries there. Some are larger than others. Some seem to be 1, 2, maybe 3 stones. Is that do you reference that as a family cemetery, that few?
There was a cemetery on our land, and that was, I think, mostly a family, but I think there were others from the neighborhood too that were buried there. But the stones have all fallen down, and Nobody's done anything with them.
Wow. How far
And
back
the
do you think they're
town-
going to go? I mean, are these 1700s? Are these 1800s?
At least 18.
All right.
From what I've been told, the town didn't even know that cemetery was there until they started to repair the road. And then they sort of dug into what looked like coffins or something. And then they started looking around, and that's why they had to wall where it's between the road and the cemetery, there's a wall of stones, and they walled up the cemetery part.
So 1700s. I don't know who we would contact in order to get stones like that repaired. Is that the responsibility? I'm not asking you, but is that the responsibility of the town in which they are found? Or Daughters of the American Revolution, DAR? I don't know that. It's a good question.
I don't know. I kind of think it would be the town that would be responsible for,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. Do they have a cemetery association?
I know that there are some famous people in the area, names that you and I could remember historically, and DAR has. I can contact, and maybe they could share who would be responsible for that. As you say, they start to fall over, they've cracked from weather or mischief, people,
People take them.
Yeah. Oh, that's a positive. Oh, I don't want to go there. Okay. Let's see. You talked about John Brown Cemetery. Is that the one that's on your land?
Yes, that not the cemetery. His cellar hole.
Cellar Hole.
Cellar hole. I don't really know where he's buried, but his cellar hole was on our land. The one that the last piece that we sold was there.
I don't want you to laugh when I come up with this. All right, get ready.
Okay.
I've heard you speak, and others have said the same thing, maybe your relatives, about the ghosts that walk Texas Hill Road. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Well, they had Civil War uniforms on, not the uniform they would be wearing at a show or something like that, but they had the hats, the big floppy hats, and the long floppy like overcoat. And they would be walking. My daughter Kimberly she said she saw 3 of them coming up, and she said, now who would that be? 3 of them coming home from the Civil War. And I said, well, John Brown probably would be one, because that's where he lived, was on that road right there. And probably Mr. Gorley, the one that died in Andersonville prison, would be coming home because he lived in the house right up the road. And my great-grandfather, her great-great-grandfather.
Is this a one-time experience for Kimberly?
I'm not absolutely sure. I think it was, but I'm not sure. But other people would see a single person dressed like that walking. One of my aunts saw him when she was going home, and she said we went by. I think both of these were like after 11 o'clock at night.
I was just going to ask about the time.
Yes, because they were up visiting and, and talking and having coffee and whatever. And they were on their way home, and she said, we went by this person that was walking on the side of the road, and I didn't say anything, she said, for a while. And then after a while, her husband said, did you see that person? And she said, yes. I wondered if you did.
Wow.
And then one of my cousins later went that way to work, and he was working the 11 to 7 shift in Bristol, and he went down there, and he said he saw that same person.
This is like UFOs. Do we believe? And you have so many people that have seen them over time. Amazing, amazing. Childhood memories. I'm going to say a word and you come back at me with a thought. And again, you can pass if you want to. If I said to you weather, over the years, do you remember some certain kind of weather?
Weather?
Weather, and that could be floods, that I guess snow that we've had over time, ice jams that we've had over time. If nothing connects, we'll pass.
Oh, after I grew up, I knew about floods when Plymouth was flooding, and I heard the stories of the flood, but I don't remember the big one. I know my mother said it because all of like Lower Interval and beside where Crystal Springs are, all that road was all closed. That
Very
was
good.
all flooded. And she said that even it looked funny to see the bread trucks coming into Plymouth. They'd go up by there.
Because they couldn't get through the regular.
Because they couldn't get through on the regular road, so
So the
they had to
largest
come
flood.
up on the back roads to get to Plymouth.
So that could be 1927 is the big flood.
And the only thing I really remember about, there was an earthquake once. I remember we had oil lamps, you know, hanging from the ceiling, and that was swaying. I really, you know, and we got big snowstorms
course.
with drifts and
Would you agree that we had probably more snow way back when than we do today in the last handful of years?
oh yes, yes,
Okay.
a lot. You hear the tractor coming down, chug, 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 chug.
Next one on my list, fairs. You went to the Plymouth Fair. What did you enjoy about the Plymouth Fair?
The candy cotton.
Okay, good.
and
Good.
and the subs with all the junk on it, you know, green peppers and onions and all that stuff.
It was a sad day when they no longer held it. Many people say that. Yeah, it was something fun to look forward to by,
Just walking up and down the
yeah.
midways and whatever. Yeah.
If I said to you family, friends, events, birthdays, weddings, times together, anything come to your mind? Is there a birthday that seems to resonate with you for some reason?
No,
Just fun?
I don't think so.
Okay. Let's see. I have you talking about Big Squam. You loved visiting the island on Big Squam. Dad had built the first steamboat there?
My great-grandfather,
Okay, we need to change
I was
it.
always told that my great-grandfather had the first steamboat on Big Squam, but I know the Asquam Hotel takes credit for that. But I was always told that my great-grandfather had it. But of course, he didn't have a big name. He didn't own a hotel, you know, so. And then he got the island out in the middle of Big Squam, and he built a barge, and he used to carry some dirt and rocks and fill in, because the island, I believe, was made something like a horseshoe, and he filled in the center part of it.
Wow.
And he used to, when my father got old enough and they were to be able to tell him where rocks and things were, they used to tie him on the front of the steamboat to watch for rocks. So he knew where practically every stone and every rock in Big Squam was.
I wrote down the following. In those years, if you paid your taxes there for 3 years, one could own the island on Squam.
Yes.
Never heard of it? Interesting. Very interesting. All right. Let's think about the changes that have occurred in Plymouth over time. Anything come to mind?
The changes Tenny Mountain Highway going in.
Huge. That's a big one that everybody talks about.
Everybody, yeah. That's about the only change. And the buildings that the college is taking, that's a change from all of the homes where people used to live and children used to play out in the road, and now you go by certain areas and there's no home there and there's no children playing in the road.
The college has gotten larger and larger.
The college has taken it and built dormitories or something.
I have been writing, and I think you're aware of that, I write short stories, and one of them that I did was on street names. And close to your area, you have Brimstone Alley, you have Rabbit Alley along Route 3. Do you have any idea where they came from? And you can say no, I'm just trying to steal your memory if I can.
I don't have any idea where they got those names from. And Milton Pettingill mentioned them as part of his early childhood. But as I remember, I did see that interview, and as I remember, he didn't have any idea where the names came from either.
It's interesting that we can have a formal name, and yet you can have a towny name that we've associated with something. When I'm going up Ward's Hill, which we are comfortable with, and you're actually talking about this certain section of Highland Street.
Right.
And you have to be careful who you say that to, because they don't know what we're talking
No.
about. Okay.
But this Brimstone was always, I mean, I was born there, and it was always Brimstone until somebody, I guess, in the selectman's office got the idea that it was Cummings Hill Road, and I don't know where that came from, and I don't know where they found it, but it was always Brimstone, and then Rabbit Alley down at the foot of Brimstone Hill. And that was never, when I was growing up, that was never plowed. That was never an open road, and no one lived there.
Interesting.
There was grass growing up in the middle of it and whatever.
Favorite people that have affected you? People that you know in town. It could be relatives, friends, parents of friends that have affected you over time. Was there one special person, two special people?
Well, I think my parents affected me, and I think I went up in later years to stay with Rosamond Orr and take care of her, and I think I learned a lot from her too.
Was she getting older? She's much older than you?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
She had a daughter my age.
And so she wasn't feeling well?
Rosamond?
Yeah.
No, she had a heart attack.
There we go. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
I ask this one a lot. Fond memories of foods. It could be when you gathered with your family, or it could be some place that you went on the main street or elsewhere. What comes to mind when we talk about foods?
Foods? Favorite foods? Well, I love spaghetti. Practically any kind of pasta. And
I'm going to look at my notes because maybe I'll...
good idea.
Yeah, me too. Gordon's Pizza Truck. I can remember Gordon's Pizza Truck.
Yes, down on Main Street.
Very good. For a lot of
Yes.
years. For a lot of years.
Yes, and then they and Sherwood Kidder built the Flying Saucer out on Tenny Mountain.
Tenny Mountain. Okay.
But foods, my mother always at noontime cooked a lot of potatoes. We had big dinners, lunch at noontime and also at nighttime too. But then she'd cook so many potatoes so that she could have, they're called pan fries now. We called them warmed up potatoes, and I hated them.
Okay.
I hated them. And you go to a restaurant, would you like pan fries with that?
No, thank you.
No.
Let's see. I'm going to talk, well, you're going to talk, I hope, just a little bit about the wars of past, World War I, II, Korea, Afghanistan. Did any of your relatives serve?
I had an uncle, well, of course, my great-grandfather was in the Civil War.
All right.
And I had an uncle who was in the Second World War. And I guess the thing about wars that I remember, it's the blackouts. They used to blow a whistle or something, and you had to pull your shades down and turn your lights out. And it was like a practice for if we were being bombed.
There are stories that people have shared about places in Plymouth where there were towers and they would be manned, and just in case an airplane came through, it would be the responsibility of that person to share it with other people. Maybe that's an interesting story I can look into, because a handful of people have shared that with me over time. During your lifetime, again, you can pass.
You used to be a spotter with your father. And where?
I was down in New Hampton.
New Hampton.
Down in New Hampton that happened?
Yeah.
So I've had a handful of people talk about that with me, so maybe I can write up a short story. Interesting. This is World War II. This is World War II. Thank you. Thank you. During your lifetime, have you ever had somebody that did you feel that they had a prejudice against you for any reason, bias?
Other than all the school kids that looked down your nose because you lived on a farm.
A farm.
A farm. Other than them,
Okay.
no, I
Wow.
guess not.
Wow, wow. Do you remember a store or two maybe that used to be on the main street or elsewhere? Makes no difference, because we did have a handful of stores on the secondary streets that were there, and today they're no longer there.
Well, I remember some of the stores that were on Main Street, they were just like regular stores. Then there was
Food stores, department stores,
Adams Market
sure, sure.
and all of those, First National
Oh, that's right, First National, A&P,
and
three of them together. Okay,
J.J. Newberry's.
there we
J.J.
go,
Newberry's.
J.B. Newberry's.
Yes. Have you been to the new one yet?
No, I haven't yet. Nope. On my list. Things to do, though. Yeah, yeah. If we had a group of people right here sitting down with us now, younger folks,
If we could just stop.
go backwards.
John Kelly had a little jewelry store on Main Street,
Where would that be? South or north?
Central.
By the Common. By the Common?
Yeah, it was someplace between Adams Market and the cafe,
Kelly.
Jox's Cafe, Village Green.
That's right, Village Green. Jox's Cafe, that's another one. Yeah.
It was in between there. He had a little jewelry
Store.
store.
I remember Mr. Prue
Topham's
and Mr. Topham. There we go. Yeah, that might be
was
fun.
in there. And Tier, someone by the name of Tier.
Ah,
I think his daughter married a Minna Keller.
you are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Virginia Tier, and her father had a store on the main street.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite some time ago. Good memory. Good memory. But if we had, can I go on now?
There was a store on Langdon Street but I can't remember the person's name. And they used to have things that appealed to children, certain candy bars or something. I know I used to want to go in there and get one.
Langdon and Cummings Street. I tried to contact that person. Mary Jargan gave me his name. They were probably in the same high school class, and I couldn't reach him. He didn't respond. I think he was in Texas. I wanted the information. A couple people have talked about the store, so I figured it would be worthwhile to investigate, but I failed. Yeah. I have one more question for you, outside of have we missed anything. If you were to share something with future generations that are around you right now, with your age, with your wisdom, with your experiences, what might you want to share with them?
I would tell them to sit down and think about life around them and what they really liked to do and wanted to do. Not to jump into something thinking, oh, that sounds interesting, I think I'll go do that. Think about where it's going to lead you and try to go in a direction and do things that would lead you to where you want to be.
Life must be difficult. Here we are today chatting, but think about being a 15-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 22-year-old, trying to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their lives that would bring them joy, challenges, happiness.
And everything is so different now.
Yeah. It's
We
less,
didn't have drugs and all that to deal with.
yeah, that's a great comment for us to end on. Eleanor, thank you. We made it. All right. Was this difficult, or I hope it was fun?
No, are we off air?
No, we're not off air. We've got a couple more
We're
minutes.
still
So
on
stay
air.
stay straight.
I
Just for
think
two
that
more.
was the name, the people who owned that store, Tomaselli? Were they Tomaselli?
You're absolutely right. Yes, Tomaselli. Cosmos. Am I right? Tomaselli.
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, I'm feeding
don't
off of
know.
you right now. I think we're right on that one. We should do a little bit more investigation. But thank you for your willingness to join me today and share your memories of the area. I think every time I listen to a person next to me, I learned a great deal. So we need to say goodbye to our audience.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today, people. It's important for us to continue to collect the stories and memories. We do it with this oral history that we have, and you're going to see it on television. Yet at the same time, we hope you will consider doing this with your friends, with your family members before it's too late and they're no longer with us. Write things down. Here's my notes. I write them all down otherwise. Save them, share them with your family when they come home, and they will thank you later for it. So we'll close down till next month. And again, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're
It was
welcome.
fun. Yeah.